All right, let's go ahead and jump in. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, How to Champion Your Deskless Workforce with On-Demand Pay from Skedulo and Rain. I am Chelsea Basilata, Senior Manager of Partner Alliances here at Skedulo, and I will be your moderator today. Before we jump into our discussion, I want to cover off on a few housekeeping items for you. The first is that we will be taking questions at the end of the session. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll address them at the end. The second is that we are recording this webinar and the recording will be sent out to you shortly after it's finished. All right, let's get into it. We're going to start with some introductions of the speakers that we have today. First, we have Wendy Kinney, who is a tenured executive with over 20 years of consulting, implementation, sales, and sales management experience spanning across the workforce optimization, SaaS, and healthcare tech sectors. Her proven track record extends into both startups and large organizations alike, including NICE Systems, Cathlight Health, Merced, MCI, and JIF. Wendy is the Executive Vice President of Global Sales and Solutions at Skedulo. She lives in Colorado with her family, including her 4-year-old daughter and their golden retriever, Steve. Next is Jen. Nashville resident Jen Terrell has established a successful career in sales throughout North America. Jen has played a key role in many successful startups like Living Social and Groupon, establishing valuable relationships with thousands of suppliers across America. Currently, she is the Vice President of Employer Partnership at Rain Instant Pay, an early wage access provider. The company's mission is to kill predatory loans and help the financial wellness of the everyday worker. Thanks for joining us today, Wendy and Jen. Let's learn a little bit about the organizations that you represent. So first we have Rain, which Jen works for. Rain is an organization that provides early wage access or on-demand pay, which is a financial wellness benefit that targets eliminating predatory financial products and gives people full control of their income and finances. Rain is backed by QED investors, the original co-founders of Capital One, and is the most active group globally in the instant pay and financial wellness benefit space. Next up, we have Skedulo. Founded in 2013, Skedulo is headquartered in San Francisco with offices in Australia, Vietnam, and the United Kingdom. Skedulo's leading deskless productivity cloud solution powered by AI and machine learning empowers organizations to manage, engage, and analyze their deskless workforce, supporting the 80% of global workers who don't work in a traditional office setting. Skedulo's platform helps enterprises intelligently manage, schedule, dispatch, and support deskless workers on the go, whether they are in fixed location facilities or mobile field workers on the front line. Thanks again, Jen and Wendy, for taking the time to chat with us today. This is going to be a fireside chat style session where we'll have the chance to learn more about how organizations can champion their deskless workforce with on-demand pay. So let's jump right into it. Wendy, if we could start with you, what does it mean to champion the deskless workforce?
Thanks, Chelsea. It's interesting because as an organization, we've created solutions with the frontline worker in mind, and anybody who doesn't have a desk or maybe only spends part of their day sitting at a desk, or mobile workers. And that's priority one to us. And even though, as you might imagine, especially in the world we're in now, it's a very growing percentage of the workforce, we've found over the years that it's a group that's been kind of wildly underserved by technology and solutions and support. And we're just very focused on driving satisfaction for their everyday working life. So we have a very, and in fact, it's part of our mission statement is to champion the deskless worker. We have a program, Chelsea, that you know about called Skedulo Heart that is designed specifically to ensure that we're always serving that group within our community. So we do things with nonprofits. We also do partnerships on things like blood drives, but we care a lot about this idea of supporting this group that's working so hard in the workforce, but maybe a bit underserved and undersupported.
Yeah, and I do have to say, and I might be biased as a schedule employee, but it does feel really great to be part of an organization that has this mission and is built for those individuals working out in the world on a daily basis that can tend to get lost in the shuffle or forgotten about a little bit.
I agree.
So with all that being said, Wendy, how does a Skedulo partnership with RAIN, a provider of on-demand pay, help us further this mission of championing the deskless workforce?
I can't wait for Jen to talk about what RAIN does, but we were so drawn to the mission at what they're doing at RAIN, and I think it's must be so lovely to wake up every day, and I can't think of better champions of the deskless worker than Jen and the RAIN organization. Part of the reason that we felt like this was so important was I know that Jen's going to share some of the statistics, but I feel like at this point as employers, I think everybody's looking to help their employees, especially right now, because it's so uncertain. And we think that the partnership between RAIN and Skedulo is so important because all of the things that have been a struggle for this part of the workforce have only become more acute, right, in more recent times. And we were very deliberate to choose RAIN because we feel like our organizations have the same DNA, that we're built the same way, same type of culture where it's so inspiring every day to hear the stories of how hard this group works and everything that we can do to make their lives just a little bit easier, because the things they do are so important in our communities to support us through healthcare initiatives and the really important work that they do. So for us, we think that it's really important to try to be part of this solution out in the workforce, and partnering with RAIN to be able to do that, and being able to provide a financial wellness options for these groups, we think is so critical. And I can't wait for Jen to explain why it's so important.
Thanks, Wendy. And I gotta say, I am getting a little choked up thinking about how we are able to come together and really make a difference for those individuals that both of our organizations care about the most. So Jen, I know when you, Wendy, and myself first spoke, you kind of took us to school and really opened our eyes to the struggles that people are facing when it comes to financial wellness. Could you remind me some of the stats and how those align to RAIN's mission?
Yeah, well, first of all, Chelsea and everybody on the Skedulo team, thank you for having me. I also was getting a little misty listening to Wendy talk about our partnership with Skedulo. It was such a great reminder of how aligned both of our companies' missions are. And thank you for such a beautiful intro, Wendy. I'm extremely flattered. And yes, Chelsea, regarding stats, this will blow your mind. Let me start with this. There are more than 20,000 payday loan companies in the United States and only 14,267 McDonald's, for a point of reference. And that number is actually growing. If you live in Ohio, where I'm originally from, or Nevada or Texas for that matter, you can take a loan against your upcoming paycheck and you can get quick access to your cash by paying a mere 700% in interest for the privilege. It's literally disgusting. And at RAIN, it's our mission to kill these predatory lenders. And it's actually a really big job because the financial landscape for most working Americans is pretty abysmal right now. Pre-COVID, the average worker, and in fact, some stats say 78% of all American workers was already living paycheck to paycheck, and almost no one had $400 in savings if a car breaks down or there's some unplanned expense. And that's why these predatory lenders are popping up on every corner in major cities and all throughout rural communities as well. In fact, worldwide, there are 630 million workers living in extreme poverty or moderate poverty. Think about that for a second. 630 million people get up and go to work every week for 40 to 55 hours and still cannot cover basic essentials like gas in their car, food on their table, or diapers for their children. And here in the US, it's not just the payday lenders that are the problem. Granted, I think they're the most egregious, but it's our own banking institutions who are getting in on the game by taking the opportunity to raise our overdraft charges and minimum balance requirements, hike up those late fees on credit cards. All of that, I believe, is in an attempt to capitalize off of this terrible situation that exists where a family of four simply cannot make it to next Friday's paycheck. And all of this is resulting in the average family incurring $150 to $180 a month in needless banking fees. So they just can't get out from under.
Yeah, and the stress just must be so hard to overcome, especially with everything else that's going on in the world. I just can't even imagine. So Jen, before meeting you and speaking with you, like I said before, both Wendy and I would never have known any of this. So how does RAIN help individuals avoid becoming one of these stats or figures?
Yeah, well, at RAIN, what we do to simplify it is we use our capital and our technology to allow those hardworking employees access to their pay as soon as they've earned it. In many cases, just like moments after they clock out of that shift, instead of having to wait until their company's scheduled payday. So this really allows employees access to cash that can help them avoid what we call those timing mismatches that keep them underwater, so that they can slowly get themselves back on the path to financial freedom. We believe the first step in financial wellness is to stop that hemorrhaging. And that's what we see employees, that's how we see our employee users using it. It's that car payment that's due on the 13th, but they don't get paid until the 15th. Or they're getting ready to bounce a check and they're asking our client services rep, hey, is this money going to be in my account instantaneously, or is it going to take a day? Or recently it's actually been, hey, I've been quarantined for 10 days. I wasn't able to work my shifts at Taco Bell, and I just got back today and I need to buy diapers on my way home for work tonight. And I can't wait till my paycheck next Friday. So it's real life stuff. And we know that these are folks that if they didn't have RAIN as an option available through their employer, they would be finding some other alternative to get that money.
Yeah, that's wild. And so who are the groups of individuals that would benefit most from an on-demand pay option like RAIN? You mentioned just now Taco Bell employees, so like retail, hospitality employees. Are there other types of groups of individuals that would benefit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the short answer is everyone can benefit from it. As we see even salaried employees who make a significant annual income actually taking advantage of our benefit when their employer makes it available to them. But where we see the highest adoption is in specific industries that employ large amounts of shift workers and deskless workers who are doing those jobs that are so critical right now. So think of the home healthcare business out there. Both the skilled and the unskilled workers, including the nurses and the caregivers that are going from home to home, taking care of America's most vulnerable population. These are the folks that seem to benefit the most and really think that this is a godsend from their employer. Wendy, I think I told you about the guy that sent us a video unsolicited saying, last week my car was towed when I was at work and I had no idea what to do. So I asked my supervisor if I could leave for the day because I needed to go borrow money from someone to get my car. And my supervisor told me, listen, you have money available to you right now in your RAIN Instant Pay app because you've already earned it this week. And you can just send it right to your bank account right this minute. And the employee said, I could not believe that my company had something like that available to me. I was so grateful. His name was Robert, by the way. And in answer to your question, Chelsea, if you have any Roberts that work for you, they are the folks that benefit the most from RAIN.
That's awesome. And so how did apps like RAIN become so popular over the past few years for the Roberts and those groups of individuals that can really benefit? Like, why now is on-demand pay even an option for employees?
Yeah, I think there's a couple reasons these apps have become so popular in recent years and have really just blown up in probably the last 6 months. But But first, I would argue, Chelsea, that the timing of payroll has always been an issue for employees, especially lower wage employees who have difficulty making it between paychecks. So we know this isn't a new problem because we talk to employers every single day who have these internal loan repayment programs that they're administering, because when an employee needs access to cash for some unplanned expense, they really do have very few resources to turn to in those situations. One of those resources is actually their employer, who they go to with their head down, asking for an advance, or in some cases even a loan, just to get them to the next pay period. As a side note, that's another thing that we love about RAIN. It gives the employee dignity and helps the employer not to have as many of those conversations in the future. I think the other data point that proves the need has been there for quite a while is the number of companies we see every month that are migrating from biweekly or semi-monthly pay to weekly pay to keep up with the demands by their employees to be paid more frequently. So in many ways, some employers have kind of always been using this frequency of pay as a competitive advantage and as a retention tool. They want to keep employees happy and keep them productive, and they're willing to bear the cost and the administrative burden to do that by going to that weekly pay cycle. But what has really made early wage access apps so popular in recent years is more around the cost of moving money. Our industry didn't exist just a few short years ago because the cost of moving money and the infrastructure to be able to do it for employees just didn't make it even possible. But now it is possible. And as a result, companies like mine are stepping in and using our capital and our technology to fill that need that already existed. And by the way, let's face it, younger generations in the workforce are growing up in this Venmo and gig economy world where the idea of waiting for anything for 2 weeks, especially your paycheck, seems extremely archaic. So I think the combination of all of those things is kind of the perfect storm that's made programs like RAIN's really skyrocket in popularity.
Yeah, that's so true. I know this weekend I was out with my cousin and I bought sandwiches for us, and she immediately paid me back before I even paid the bill for the sandwiches. She sent me money. So that's totally true because that's what you expect now.
Right. It's commonplace for sure.
Yeah. And so as these apps and on-demand pay offerings have become more popular, how have the events of the last year, including the pandemic, had an impact on your industry?
Well, sadly, business has been booming at RAIN. But honestly, even before the pandemic, we were already seeing this. And, Wendy, I know you know this is true too. We were already seeing this like HCM movement, I like to call it, around total wellness of employees, which includes, social, emotional, physical, and financial wellness. So we were already seeing like so many employees really focused, or so many employers really focused on financial benefits for employees, financial wellness benefits. So combine all of that with COVID and the financial stress it has placed upon so many American workers. And it's easy to see why this kind of early access to wages was just called by CNBC the buzziest trend in employee benefits for 2020.
Oh, interesting. That's so interesting. And this is me, just for my own knowledge. Can you remind me what HCM stands for?
Human capital management.
Got
it. HR professionals and anybody who manages a workforce, deskless or in the office, is trying to figure out how to bolster benefits. And there's a lot of, effort around financial wellness.
Definitely. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I know, Wendy, that Skedulo recently did a study on how COVID has impacted both the deskless and desked workers. Are these individuals seeing similar results as to what RAIN has observed over the last 6 months or so?
Yeah. In fact, you're right. We did put together that research towards the end of the year. I think it was around October. And we surveyed thousands of executives. And we did it with desk workers and deskless workers. It was really interesting findings that align with everything that Jen's talking about. Is it said 51% of workers say that their job satisfaction has been negatively impacted by COVID. And I think what makes this situation worse is working hours at the same time have increased for all the workers by 33%. So you start to see that it's like, it's a negative impact. They need to work longer, harder, in a lot of cases because there were fewer workers there, so they had to take on a bigger load. And they said that 73% of those employers have implemented some kind of technology to help deskless workers during the pandemic. So it's been, I think, something long overdue for a group that's been underserved is to start to do more of an investment. Seems to be the last group a lot of times we end up investing in. And what we're finding is that the good news is 42% of workers say that they're optimistic about their jobs and their situation due to the actions that employers took during the pandemic. And to me, that's such a lovely statistic. And it's interesting because I came from the health and benefits space before I came to Skedulo, and we did a survey with employers and employees too around priorities around benefits. And to the point that Jen made earlier is the one place that everybody agreed, and it was by far the one that there was the most alignment around, was the need for a solution around financial wellness. Because it is something that impacts all the rest of the areas of people's wellness. And so it was really fascinating to me is that people do associate employers so heavily with their financial wellness that the more that employers can do to make people create some relief and doing what working and partnering, that's why we're so excited about RAIN in particular, that really does have an amazing impact, and it's a top priority for the employees. So it feels like now's the time to have an impact by partnering. That's why we're so excited about RAIN.
That's so true. And I know it does make a big difference, even for me, and I'm sure everybody on the phone, just knowing that your employer would take the extra step to provide a benefit for you, no matter how small. It shows that they care just a little bit more. And all those numbers from the research study that you shared are really interesting. And there's a glimmer of hope that that large of a number are optimistic about their job. So
I agree,
that's
Chelsea.
really
It's an important, that 42% wonderful news.
Definitely. And also the point about employers implementing new technology for their employees definitely ties into the conversation that we're having today. And when you're talking about payday lenders, that sounds a little bit scary, Jen, about how willing and ready they are to take advantage of the people that are searching out help, really. And so there's no doubt that RAIN's program is a much better and safer option for employees. But what would you say to an employer who has concerns about early wage access when they suggest that getting paid on demand will harm people financially in the long term because they won't have a good understanding of how to budget or plan for large purchases like a house?
Yeah. Well, I hear that, and I understand where that comes from. Full transparency, early on in this business, we had many conversations about our concern being the same. You know, our mission at RAIN is to kill predatory lending, and it's very important to us that we're not part of the bigger problem that exists where American workers are not able to get out from under and the cycle keeps getting perpetuated. So a couple of things. We find a lot of employers just don't fully understand that these are the alternatives that are available to their employees. And even if they don't think their employees are maybe using payday loans, they are definitely surprised to hear that the average paycheck to paycheck family is incurring $150 a month in needless banking fees just waiting on that paycheck. So usually employers quickly agree that this feels like a good thing. But at RAIN, we don't want to just be the alternative to getting a payday loan. We want to be the first step on that path to true financial wellness. And the next step beyond that is to promote financial literacy and to help employees with financial wellness features that keep them moving in the right direction. So all of our employee users actually have access to free financial coaching. We have an overdraft avoider feature, which it automatically transfers money into their account if they're getting ready to bounce a check, so they can avoid that $36 fee. We have an 80% prescription drug plan discounts and other deep discounts to dozens of health and wellness services like mental health services, telehealth services, even veterinary services. So there's a lot more to our program than just getting your paycheck early. And most employers, recognize that and love that about our company being a total financial wellness platform.
That's awesome. And the point about getting financial advice is great, because I know when I try and talk to my parents about financial wellness, it can get a little bit heated. So being able to ask someone other than my own family is definitely a benefit.
You can call our care line, Chelsea, and they'll
Yeah.
talk unlimited coaching.
That's awesome. That's so great. And we've talked a lot about how RAIN can help employees, but how does early wage access benefit other groups like the employer or people that work for the employer, like the HR director or payroll manager, or even the broker agency? What are the benefits for them?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's actually a big piece of what we do. And I know I can be long-winded, so I'm going to try to talk fast and make sure I get this in because we need to talk about that. It's so interesting because the idea of early wage access or earned wage access, pay on demand programs was born, as I mentioned, out of this need on the employee side, but the benefits to the employer can actually be really substantial over time. And as a result, we're seeing more and more employers developing a strategy that utilizes our program in a variety of ways. So like the benefit to the HR team is mostly around reductions in turnover over time. It may sound really silly to suggest that employees are going to stay with an employer because they can get their paycheck early, but we honestly get calls every day to our employee services line with employees asking, hey, I'm thinking about leaving ABC company and going to work at XYZ company, and I just want to make sure that my RAIN benefit is still going to work. And they don't realize and think through the fact that it's an employer benefit. It's tied to their employer. Another benefit on the people side of the business is that talent acquisition teams love this benefit. Even though most really large enterprise organizations maybe have a pay on demand benefit like the Walmarts and the FedExes of the world, it's still a massive differentiator for most mid-tier organizations and smaller organizations. So we find that talent acquisition teams see really tangible results when they publicize to prospective employees that they have, work today, get paid today benefits. I mean, it's a major driver in applications for deskless work specifically. And for the payroll manager, you might think that they wouldn't be excited about this type of benefit because they're likely the one doing the administration, but we actually see it's the opposite. Many times the payroll manager is the person who's has the most visibility into the financial issues that employees are facing because they're the ones seeing it on the paycheck. So they really understand the need. In many cases, they're the ones that are having to deal with those manual payroll advances. So this is a great way for them to offload work on a vendor like RAIN.
That's awesome. And I mean, it sounds like a total win-win for both the employers as well as the employees. And I know we're getting close to the end of time, but before we jump in to take a question or two, if an organization is interested in learning more about RAIN, what's the best way to get in contact with you or someone else on the RAIN team?
Yeah, so through our partnership with Skedulo, I think you'll have my contact information here at the end, but any of our mutual clients or mutual potential clients who want to get in touch with us, I would be happy to talk with you directly, or one of my account executive who specializes in whatever industry it might be that you're in, whether it be home health care, which is we're a big benefit in home health care space, senior living, hospitality. We can definitely assign somebody to give you a demo. I didn't even mention it's completely free to the employer partner. So we don't ever feel like we're selling anything. We're, very consultative and can be a great resource for you as you're thinking through this particular benefit. And Chelsea, I would also be remiss if I didn't mention this because of our partnership with Skedulo. on-demand pay programs can really help combat scheduling issues for a couple of reasons. The first is really around the idea that as an employee, the faster I realize the reward for my efforts, the more likely I am to repeat the behavior. So having access to my pay immediately after working my shift drives people to show up for that next shift or want to pick up more shifts. So that goes to the reductions in absenteeism. But I just wanted to mention, we're so excited about our partnership with Skedulo and to be able to bring this to companies of a size that we wouldn't be able to bring it to in any other way. So that's the fantastic thing about our partnership.
Definitely. That's so awesome. Thanks for sharing all of that, Jen. And I know we're at time, but I think let's take one question. I've seen a couple of questions come in the chat before we jump off. And that is, how does RAIN differ from other similar providers?
Great question. I could talk for 20 minutes about this, but I won't. A couple of different reasons. I mean, number one, I think you can probably tell we're super passionate about our mission, and we consider ourselves a total financial wellness platform and have features and benefits that other providers don't have. There is also, for the employer partner, we fund the advances with our own money, which is a really big selling point. Some of the other companies out there require the employer partner to fund the advances, and so it's actually a disruption to their cash flow. The other thing I would say is we make it super painless for employers to roll this out. And when I say super painless, I mean days, not weeks or months. We're integrated with most all of the major providers out there. So in some cases, it's as simple as flipping a switch. And so we hear quite often that the experience that employers have with us versus what we've heard with other providers out there is that we make it super easy. So those are probably the three highlights.
Awesome. That's great. Well, we are over time, so we'll cut it off there, but just want to say thank you again so much, Wendy and Jen, for joining us today. And as we mentioned earlier, we will be sending out the recording. So if you have any additional questions, you can find Skedulo contact info as well as RAIN contact info when we send that recording out. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Wendy,
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks,
Chelsea.
Wow, thank you so much.
Everybody.